Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people are going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's a stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast. It's a Thursday, 10:30 Eastern Time here on rumble.com/AmRadPod. Reminder, guys, give us a thumbs up, follow the channel. You want to subscribe on Rumble? We really appreciate it. Definitely subscribe to the audio format on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart. We endeavor to make sure that we put the right episodes there. There was a problem, but I think it's been updated. I think the Tuesday show was showing the Saturday show, but it's been rectified. Have to thank GOB Actual for that, because he's got the technological prowess. He brings that skill set here at the American Radicals Podcast. So today is Thursday. Have everybody looked up at a calendar? It's middle of May. I mean, my kids got less than a week of school to go. Memorial Day is less than 2 weeks away. It feels like 2025 just started and we're almost halfway through, which I think is important, because today we're going to be talking about rejecting gradualism. We'll get into a piece about what gradualism is and the pitfalls that are attached to it, and the fact that the Trump administration seems to be embracing more of a grip it and rip it style with some things as it comes to firing chiefs of agencies who outwardly and publicly speak out against the administration. You have a CIA doctor who's now been fired. The courts have cleared it because she was mandating COVID-19 vaccines. We're going to end DEI at the military academies. And we're going to be sending some illegal aliens to Gitmo. So those things are good, but then also some not so good things, not coming from the administration, but just as an encouragement to continue to push ahead, because the other side, the communists, the march through the institutions, the effort, it never ends for them. So we're going to have to meet force with force. We'll give some examples as an encouragement into rejecting gradualism today. So a lot to get to, but before we do, let's thank today's sponsor. We're going to go with the OG sponsor, and that's the True Earth Pharmacy, trueearth.co, trueearth.co. And when you go there, use our promo code AmRad25, and that'll give you 10% off everything in the store. And that includes their fertilizer products and their personal supplements. Just as an anecdote here, guys, I was talking to a friend of ours, and she's been dealing with some pain, her husband as well. I gave them the trueearth.co URL to go to, gave them the AmRad25, and then just saw her a couple of days ago, and she is doing backflips. She's so excited about it. She said, I can't believe it. It got delivered. I've been taking it less than a week. Pain has completely subsided. Very thankful to what they got going on there. So guys, trueearth.co. And as always, AmRad25 for 10% off everything in the store. If you have any questions, just give them a call. Now I'm going to give a call to my co-host and compadre and cohort, Garrett O'Boyle at GOB Actual, the technological wizard, the artist of all the thumbnails. You are the glue that brings it all together, sir. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, but you're too kind, Steve, because it was my error in the first place that I put the...
Blame the tech. Come on.
I'll blame my brain. That was still basically a pile of mush on Tuesday. So I think I'm clawing out of that slowly. So hopefully we'll be back to our normal fare a little bit today, and I won't screw up the downloads.
All right. Well, if we do screw up the downloads, I think you'll be briefed on who to blame it on properly. And if maybe there's a delay here, people will miss out on the 30,000-foot view, and we'll get into the specifics later on in the show. So let's start out with the big theoretical. I read this, I'm a nerd. I'm just reading all this stuff all the time. It comes from Commonplace, What Matters in America. And the name of the piece is called When Gradualism Fails. Now, I'm not really an expert on all terminology. I had to kind of like dig into it, but I thought this guy here, whose name is Carl, spelled with a K, but not the bad kind of Carl, is Carl Zinmeister. And he's got some interesting perspectives here, I think, that will not be new and novel to you, things that you've heard in the past, being someone who's worked for the federal government. Here are some quotes that you always hear when you work for any sort of agency of the government. Quote, "It has always been like this. We don't work that way here. That's not how it's done. You can't possibly change that." So for 3 years, I served, this is from Carl. For 3 years, I served in the White House as chief domestic policy advisor to the president, and I heard these kinds of responses constantly. The biggest enemy of change is the demand for business as usual among the managerial class. Now, he makes an interesting point that in the last 16 years, we've increased our budget by 250%. So from $3 trillion to $7 trillion. Conserving dysfunctional institutions has no appeal. Suddenly, shutting down broken entities and building anew has appealed to even the most cautious patriots. Seems like we're trending in that way, which is a good thing. This has been produced the icon-breaking impulse that swept our federal government in 2025. So basically like the intellectual backing and the appetite for things like the Doge. Like, why are we paying for this stuff? Let's get rid of it. Of course, then the Republicans don't vote on it. But nevertheless, conservative and moderate Americans have traditionally favored two courses of action. Now, here's traditionally what they go for: reform of failing institutions. I mean, we got to take out the waste, fraud, and abuse, and withdrawal, which means that you just step away from the entity entirely, and that would be like you sending your kids to charter school or homeschooling because the public schools suck. Americans on the left generally have taken a more aggressive tack in changing their governments. One of their favorite tactics has been institutional capture. They get elected to the school board so they can make sure that your kids can learn all about cutting off their genitals. An even more confrontational approach is to delegitimize and destroy a disfavored institution, which is why the police are bad and we got to get rid of the traditional family. But now, as he closes it out here, from Commonplace, the title is When Gradualism Fails. He said, Donald Trump, new administration, new philosophy, getting away from just doing reform, just doing withdrawal. His philosophy, according to Carl Zinmeister, is tear down the mess and rebuild from scratch.
I concur with that final sentiment because what do we have left? And I suppose in a way that would be the conservative version of capturing the entity. It's as you're going through that, it's beyond clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there's this massive or vast. I combined the two there, Steve. A new word. We've got a massive polarity between the two sides. In the left, they really do a far better job of like you said from that piece, capturing the institution. Where I mean, I think of our own situation. We homeschool because we're like, well, we're not sending our kids to the government heathens who are gonna pound DEI and gender neutrality or whatever else into their young little brains and mold them into what the state wants them to be. So what do you have left at this point? And one of the things you mentioned was, well, we've always done it this way. It got me thinking of a story from my SWAT days in the FBI. I don't remember the precise details, but there was a guy on the team who had been on the team for a really long time. I think he'd been on the team for at least a decade. Like he's one of those guys who's everybody that comes and goes like, oh yeah, he's always been here. You know, one of those guys. And I don't remember exactly what he did, but I remember our STL, that's SWAT team leader, was pissed. He was livid at whatever it was. And I don't remember if it, yeah, I'd have to dig a little deeper in my brain to recollect the exact details. But our STL was pissed. And he's like, basically, what the F? What did you do that for? Why did you do that? And the guy was like, well, we've always done it that way. And that sent our STL over the top, which I'd say is it a good indicator that we had a strong STL, because he's thinking, don't just do it because we've always done it that way. You need to adapt and overcome and do what is best given the situation, not just, oh, round peg, square hole, but we've always just used the round peg, so I'm going to try to jam it in there. And it also makes me think. The other night we're going through at our small group Bible study the small but mighty book of Philemon, which, if you don't know, it's the Apostle Paul. He writes a letter to this guy named Philemon, and it's essentially on behalf of a slave of Philemon's who ran away, named Onesimus. And Onesimus eventually meets Paul in Rome, and he gets saved and is an ambassador for Christ. And Paul's like, dude, you got to rectify this problem. And if you don't know the history of slavery in Rome, like, you're not a person, you're just property. So Philemon could have had him put to death. He could have had him punished immensely. Who knows what else he could have done. And Paul urges him, and I forget the exact verse, but he tells him, I want you to do this of your own accord. I don't want to force you to do the right thing here. And it got me thinking of the term sua sponte, which is the Army Rangers. It's basically their motto. It's Latin for of your own accord. And oftentimes in the Army, if a guy did something, sometimes bad, oftentimes it was if they did something well or something good or something maybe outside of normal infantry doctrine or whatever, but they saw a problem that needed to be fixed, and then they sua sponte it. They just did it. And that's the epitome of the problem with government is all of those quotes or sayings that you went through. I saw it in the Army. I saw it in the police force. I saw it in the FBI. Well, we've always just done it this way.
The best people are the ones that embrace the other phrase, which is it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, particularly when you work in a government agency. And look, you mentioned the SWAT team. I think that one of the lessons I learned from that, and I'm sure it was imparted on you, and even more so being an infantry veteran, was that your greatest asset when you're going into a hostile area, taking over maybe a hostile institution like the government, would be speed, surprise, violence of action. It's better to make the wrong decision than to make no decision. Analyzing is paralyzing, as Keith Jackson used to say. And I think there's also this natural inclination of people in maybe a kinetic kinetic atmosphere. I mean, if you're in combat, but also just in general, to just freeze. They say fight or flight. Freeze is the third part, and actually the lion's share of what most people do.
Yeah, another saying we had in the infantry was, no plan survives first contact. And it's so true, because you've got this ops plan and you've got this idea of what your patrol is going to look like, and then bam, you hit an IED, or you get to the village you're supposed to go to, and then you start taking fire, and you thought you were just going on a hearts and minds trip to the village, but instead they're actually all Taliban and they want to kill you. And so then your plan immediately changes, and that is where that speed and violence of action comes into play into great effect. And also, I think let's just look at the first Donald Trump 45 and Trump 47. Trump 45 didn't necessarily, he was not a government guy, didn't really know what he was doing, and just kind of rolled with government. And
he made Reince Priebus his chief of staff, who ran the RNC. Yes.
And he was taking in the information in real time and thinking he's making the best decisions. You mentioned Reince Priebus. We could point to Christopher Wray. One of the main pitfalls of Donald Trump has been his personnel picks. I think overall that's better this time around, but also he has that experience. He has that lived experience. So this time he came in with an Elon Musk and a Doge and doing things that the government doesn't do. And so many people say, well, you can't do that. Well, he must be a fascist. He must be this. He must be that. Well, or maybe he's just taking a new approach because of what we just went through in this article, because the government doesn't ever do that. Except the left, they don't necessarily take a new approach, but they just use an ice pick and whittle down that iceberg bit by bit by bit. And then before you know it, it's all captured. And then the clerk who's been in government for 35 years just
relies on well, we've always done it this way.
Yeah. I mean, just intellectually, it's like a World War I trench battle where the other side, if they take some ground and they jump into your trench and they use it, like the leftists will use the institutions that have been propped up by everyone, even our side, and just flip them 180 degrees and use them against you. Whereas our side tends to be like, well, that's ceded territory now. I guess we can't redo anything with it. We'll just withdraw back into the hedge line. All right, let's use some examples though of, I think, which are some good things. We're making decisions, we're moving quickly, and I saw this one, and there's a couple pieces attached to it which are interesting about the FEMA acting director. So CNN Politics, Trump's acting FEMA chief fired a day after breaking from the administration. I mean, a principal within the administration goes public and says that the administration is doing things wrong and then loses his job. I perish the thought. Cameron Hamilton, appointed by President Trump, escorted out. The acting administrator of FEMA has been fired one day after he broke with fellow members of the administration when he told lawmakers he does not support dismantling the agency. For months, Trump and Kristi Noem, who's the Secretary of Homeland Security, they have called for the agency entirely to be eliminated. And we've talked about FEMA failures in the past, and I've said, look, I'm outvoted. I think it should be eliminated, and that's something that the administration's been talking about. But the guy who's the acting chief, the chief bureaucrat of that particular agency, I mean, shocker. He's saying, well, that would be a mistake to work myself out of a job. So I was just trying to reflect on why Trump and Noem, myself, and others might have a problem with FEMA. And I can think of a couple of recent examples.
Meanwhile, a FEMA worker has been fired after she reportedly directed workers helping hurricane survivors not to go to homes with yard signs supporting President-elect Donald Trump. FEMA's leader released that information in a statement today, saying it was a clear violation of FEMA's core values. The agency did not identify the employee or say where it happened. Florida's governor says he's opened an investigation into what happened.
It happened in Florida and North Carolina.
Why do news spokesholes talk like that? A violation of FEMA code principles.
They are readers. They're not really consumers of the news. I mean, they didn't sit there and read about when gradualism fails.
They just read the teleprompter.
They do the Ron Burgundy, and then they'll curse you, San Diego.
Yeah.
I mean,
go F yourself, San Diego.
Obligatory movie reference in the books. All right. How about another failure that we even covered on the American Radicals podcast? This is from the DHS own website. It's archived because it was under the prior administration. Department of Homeland Security announces $380 million in additional funding to communities receiving migrants.
Are they migrants, though, Steve? Are they really?
They're illegals.
Okay.
I don't care what you call them. DHS, through FEMA and U.S. Customs and Borders Protection, announces allocation of over $380 million through the Shelter and Services Program, through the SSP, as the acronym goes. DHS directly supports communities that are providing critical support. So we gave $380 million to give critical support to illegal aliens in the form of food, shelter, clothing, medical care, transportation.
Dude.
And wait, there's more, Garrett.
Oh, man.
The funding augments already $260 million that we had already dispersed. Why would we want FEMA gone?
I mean, Steve, it's over $500 million. Can we just get, I don't know, 5-10% of that just for a whistleblower fund to take care of all of us? We'd be set. But no, let's just fund illegals.
I would put it all in crypto and we would be gajillionaires.
Well, okay, I can't help it, but where is the FEMA head who is going to be implanted, who's saying things like, oh, I don't know, let's turn the FEMA headquarters building into a museum of the deep state? Where's that person?
I do think it's interesting how we're decrying that they have eliminated this acting boss of FEMA, right? And you dig into like who he is, and they try to paint him in the most red-blooded American way over at Politico. And I found this one, and I did think it was interesting. And there's even a criticism here from my standpoint of like, I know we're rejecting gradualism. You should have gone faster, because this guy Hamilton, who's a former Navy SEAL, so he's a good guy automatically, considered resigning about 2 months ago.
Well, why
Until
didn't he
FEMA
then?
staffers convinced him to stay, like very much like Brian Driscoll, to be a bulwark against what the Trump administration was pushing for. So he decided to stay back and thwart what was going to go ahead. And that was according to a person granted anonymity to discuss personnel issues. Hamilton was never nominated for the top role. He's been enacting the entire time. And the reason that he was never nominated to take it over is because he lacks the actual emergency management experience that is required under federal law. So he was never, ever going to be able to take the post full time. They just kind of had him there to like keep it between the lanes here, right? You don't want to veer off and wind up in a ditch just until we're able to get the full-time person there, make sure that the trains are running relatively on time. Hopefully there's not going to be a hurricane, something to that effect. But instead, this guy goes out there and then just says, no, I'm going to take a stand and speak out against the administration and expect zero consequences, because that's how things have always gone.
You know, Steve, I'm going to take my shot here. I doubt it will ring in the ears of Donald Trump. I don't think we have a vast enough listenership, but you never know. Now, I don't have a history in FEMA. I do have a little bit of experience with emergency preparedness through law enforcement training, and then even additional courses and whatnot when I was the assistant weapons of mass destruction coordinator in the Wichita resident agency of the FBI. But I will say this. My background is in the infantry. And what do infantrymen do, Steve? They break things. So if you want to break FEMA, if you want to dismantle FEMA, I'm your guy. I'm looking for a job too. So, here I am. I am. Send me.
Could you find a padlock and chain for less than $380 million?
Yes. I got one for free. I got one just in the garage. It's free. I'll bring it. I'll bring it on my first day.
I mean, that seems like you'd be working yourself out of a job, which is 180 degrees different than every other government bureaucrat, because we've always done it that way. But let's start the movement. Hashtag GOB for the number 4 FEMA. And if you know, you know. I'm just throwing out all the acronyms today. Pivot over to the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who's issued a memorandum, and it was reported in Headline USA. He announced the fate of DEI at West Point and the other military academies.
Good. A win, a victory.
Just not waiting, right? Defense Secretary announced last week that admissions at military academy will now be based exclusively on merit, not race, ethnicity, or sex. Each service secretary has 30 days to ensure no consideration of race, ethnicity, or sex in admissions decisions. And I mean, I found the directive that came down, and Pete Hegseth has like kind of a cool autograph. I don't know why. I just noticed that, I don't ever get that impression from presidents. Presidents always like actually do the full script.
I like Trump's signature. You can't read it.
but
it looks cool.
But Pete Hegseth actually put this out on social media. This is the timeline that we live in now, folks. Modern day, right? This is the way that they directly address the people. And you can see that they, in Sharpie, underlined exclusively on merit and no considerations of race, ethnicity, or sex. And 30 days is probably, for people in the private sector, they're thinking like, why would it take you a month to not do that anymore? But from a government perspective,
that is
lightning.
Hey, look at that. We're firing on all cylinders again, Steve. So, think of how easy this is, because you hop on USMA, the United States Military Academy at West Point's website, or wherever, whichever one you want to go to, or whoever's in charge of the website, and you just go in the back end and you alter the application to remove those fields. It's very simple. It could be done in hours at most. If you're taking breaks every couple minutes, it would be done in a couple hours. But they got 30 days. It's ample time. And I love to see it, because it's easy for me to bemoan all things FBI. I mean, very, very easy, considering it's May 15th. Let's go. And yet you've got somebody like Pete Hegseth out there doing the thing he was brought in to do. And Tulsi Gabbard, I think, is another one, doing the thing she was brought in to do. Former Democrat, RFK Jr., former left-wing Democrat. They're the ones coming in doing the thing they were supposed to do. And what I love especially about this story, or really the whole hero's journey for Pete Hegseth, former grunt, former infantryman, made it to the lowly rank of captain, if I'm not mistaken. Even if he made it to major, that's still pretty low. And then he goes and works for Fox, and then he gets brought in to be the Secretary of Defense. I love, and then he's coming in like, this was the directive. This is why I'm here, and he's doing it, and I love it, man. It's and to go back to the beginning of that, what was it, Commonplace story, where it's, well, we've always done it this way. Okay, but there was a time where to go to the military academies, we weren't always doing it this way. We weren't prioritizing gender or race or whatever other meritless claim that you could bring to the table. So this is, I count this a win. I love it.
I know you count this next one a win because it involves, what does it always go back to, Garrett?
COVID.
The Epoch Times, a judge allows the CIA to fire a doctor who helped enforce military COVID-19 mandate. I mean, it's kind of a few derivatives removed from what she originally did. This Dr. Terry Adiram. So a federal judge denied an emergency bid by Dr. Adiram to halt her dismissal from the CIA, rejecting her claims that political activists orchestrated her firing in retaliation for her role in enforcing the military's COVID-19 vaccine mandate.
I've got a question right off the bat. So back during peak COVID mandate era, late September 2021 until, I don't know, for a couple years, I really was tracking that stuff, mostly from the DOJ side. But because of my military roots, I was keeping up on the DOD stuff, and there was some crossover, things that were pertinent and important. So how did she go from DOD to CIA? Where did that transfer happen? Was that just like hey, we're going to give you this promotion or this better position because you did what we wanted you to do? You were just simply following your orders when you were over at DOD?
I'd have to look at the timeline of when she actually made the transition. And she's claiming that this is political. I mean, why would coronavirus vaccinations be political at all? But apparently there's been complaints against her at her current post. And
Good.
Just for background of what she did while she worked for DOD, the Epoch Times reports she signed key policy documents enabling Pentagon to mandate while serving as the acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. And that became a focal point in the broader political reckoning, even as the CIA maintained her dismissal was unrelated. So they're claiming that they dismissed her for other reasons. I don't care.
I don't
Reject
care
the gradualism. I don't care if you outwardly say it now. Now the judges rule be like, no, we did it because she did the coronavirus vaccine.
And she should have known better.
Yes.
It's that simple. She should have. She's a doctor, allegedly, so she should have known better.
How do you feel about sending illegals to Guantanamo Bay?
I'm good with it. You don't get to come here illegally. You broke our law when you came here. So I don't care where you go, but you can't come here.
I think that's a pretty well thought out and pragmatic position to have. I wouldn't necessarily call it based, and the reason I wouldn't call it based is because you know who's the most based as it comes to deporting illegals to Gitmo?
Barack Obama?
NBC News.
Oh.
Pentagon spent at least $21 million on flights to Guantanamo, which currently holds 32 migrants. So 32 illegal aliens are currently sitting in Gitmo. And NBC News is, first of all, going to use your own values against you, right? They're going to say, well, this is fiscally irresponsible. $21 million for only 32 illegal aliens. I, though, interpret that to mean that NBC News is advocating that we should give less expensive accommodations. It should be less comfortable for the illegal aliens while they're being deported. We should do it on the cheap, make them fly Frontier Airlines.
Man, put them on Mil Air. That's the most uncomfortable flight you'll get. Sitting against the wall, holding your rucksack with your helmet on.
So if that's truly the way I'm choosing to interpret it, I think NBC News might have the most based opinion possible on this one. But just further, the U.S. military flew 46 flights that carried migrants on military aircraft. They lasted
Language matters.
They lasted 802 hours at a cost of $21,087,300. I mean, they're completely obfuscating the fact that these flights are going to happen no matter what, because the pilots have to get their hours. So while they're doing that, they happen to be doing something like two things at the same time: walking and chewing gum, achieving a mission while they're achieving the hours, because They're not saying, well, we should just only fly training missions with empty planes, as opposed to being more efficient, actually fiscally responsible, and doing it this way. So the 21 million wasn't specifically to illegal aliens. But look, if NBC News wants to argue that we should give less comfort to the illegals, okay.
So be it. What you won't find on NBC News is them decrying the over $500 million for migrant-related matters through FEMA, but you'll find them complaining about 21 million, which is barely a drop in the bucket, just to the FEMA number that we talked about. And also, they're kind of bearing the lead here because Guantanamo isn't their final destination. So they're lying. They're lying in the headline. It wasn't just, they didn't do 40 plus flights to take 32 people, like
the math doesn't add up. No.
So their first destination is Guantanamo. And then from there, wherever they go back, they get somehow transported to their nation of origin. So they're lying to you in the headline. And then they're lying to you, calling them migrants. No, they're not. They're criminal violators.
The only solace we can take in this is that very few people saw it reported on television, because apparently nobody watches anything in cable news except for Fox, which blew my mind. Now, take the source, grain of salt, reported by Fox News.
Oh,
okay.
They've got a little stake in the matter.
Fox News Channel accounts for all of the top 1,000 cable news telecasts since Election Day. Now, the natural question is, when's the first time that somebody doesn't come in from Fox News, right? I mean, it has to be. But I'll keep you on the hook for that one. It's just going to have to wait. Since the election, Fox's total day cable news share is a roughly 65%. So 2 in 3 people watching cable news watch Fox.
Okay, so what happened here, Steve? Did people suddenly say like, oh, it's safe to watch Fox again, or what?
I mean, you have a certain level of people who are on the communist left that I'm sure were consuming MSNBC and CNN, and they were just kind of like tuning out. So maybe it's the pie itself is smaller. They're just getting a larger portion of it. But I mean, to me, ultimately, and Fox is not conservative. They're Republican.
Yeah.
But they're the skinniest kid at fat camp, I guess, in mainstream cable news.
Recruit all your boomer parents and relatives and friends to Rumble. Rumble.com/AmRadPod specifically.
Good plug. You're a professional. You're probably better than Rachel Maddow, who was the first non-Fox News cable telecast. She came in 1,104th place. Was this one individual one that came through?
That's not even good enough for the G League. Good luck making it to the NBA Finals if you can't even make it to the G League, Rachel.
Well, I think it might include the consideration that there's been a fall off in people that are consuming cable news, particularly if you're of the communist left, but also keep doing good things, and they're being reported in pom-pom wave, and people want to see pom-poms wave. I mean, I don't, you don't, but we're in the minority. Again, the minority of people that want FEMA eliminated, but apparently the president wants it too. So you never know. Grip it and rip it, reject gradualism. Let's do things a little bit more aggressively. Speed, surprise, violence of action. And that trend needs to continue, because now we're going to transition into the other side. They might not be watching Rachel Maddow. They might not be watching Jen Psaki, who made $30 million to work for MSNBC.
Dang.
Good
work if you can get it.
As is establishing and scheduling and promoting queer proms at the university level for 14-year-olds.
Oh, man.
Pacific Lutheran University.
They're not Lutheran.
They're located in Tacoma, Washington, so likely they're not Lutheran. They hosted a queer prom 5 days ago in collaboration with a local queer youth organization. The event serves as an annual gathering intended for youth as young as 14 to come, quote, experience queer joy and engage with community resources. The sign-up sheet for the dance asked attendees to list information including their pronouns, and they offered 8 specific options. So they're a little bit, I don't know, discriminatory. How can you assume only 8 options? 7 genders to choose from, again, limited. And the organization is called Oasis. That's really the parent group. Oasis is queer prom is for LGBTQ plus Rainbow Kamikaze and allied youth ages 14 to 24. So let's put 24-year-old freaks with 14-year-olds. And the registration form also said that they were promoting prices and free HIV testing for 14-year-olds. Nothing wrong there. No deviance.
Dude, I mean, I got to start with Martin Luther. In many circles, the father of the Reformation, he's rolling over in his grave at this.
Be nailing
Pacific-
those theses on the foreheads
Right.
of these freaks.
Right. You're not any branch of Christianity if you're promoting this type of thing. Plain and simple. And I know we're not at the end of the show yet, Steve, but I can't help it. Titus 1:9, talking about church leadership. It says, he must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also to rebuke those who contradict it. The Bible is abundantly clear about the sound doctrine re LGBTQ matters. It is an abomination, is what the Bible calls it. So if you're a quote unquote Lutheran who's on the board of directors, or you're the chancellor or whatever at the university, you are not adhering to sound doctrine. And you need to go and repent and then come back. Actually, you're not qualified for the leadership role at this point. So you need to find somebody who is, and then they need to come out and go against this blasphemy and say, we were wrong. We've removed the people who were in charge of this. This is an abomination unto the Lord. And we're going to do better. We're going to do our best to not fall into Satan's trap, the divisive trap of, oh, just focus on the love part, not the parts that God says is an abomination or is a sin unto him or is wrong for whatever reason. It's the opposite of sound doctrine. And it is running rampant in quote unquote Christian denominations. It's disgusting.
I mean, they have institutional capture, which they talked about in that when gradualism fails, right? They're capturing these institutions such as purportedly Lutheran Christian ideologies. And if they can't get there, they'll actively discourage you from engaging in the rightful doctrinal way that it's supposed to go. And on top of that, they're going to create these, stopgap measures, these prison, these grips on other institutions in order to further on what their ideology is. And I have a video for this because unless you're going to pray to the Rainbow Kamikaze, or as we'll find out, the climate pagans, they don't want you praying at all. And this was captured from a school board member who's objecting to prayer and actively on the record saying things like, why do you need to pray?
If you put prayer at the beginning of this meeting, I don't think that's a welcoming sign to the people who are in this room tonight. How much prayer do you need? How much God do you need? We say under God, we say it. Why do we need to say more? This to me is very disturbing. If I tell you I'm offended, I'm offended. I just don't understand why you're comfortable excluding people. Not everyone who is in this room tonight is Christian. And guess what? If you do this, we're going to have legal challenges. And guess what? It goes all the way to the Supreme Court because it's in the Constitution. I don't know why you need prayer to take this job seriously. But don't say this is going to unify when I'm telling you it will not. Why do you need this?
She's so anti-Christ. And Steve, I love it, man. I feel like you've brought stories to the fore today just to serve me up. Just to, here you go, Garrett, right on a platter for you. Because
we only go 3 days a week. I spend the other 4 saying, how can I get that boil meter revved up?
Because again, what comes to mind here, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. The Bible says, look at her. She's put together. She's reasonably pretty. She's professional looking. She's not yelling and screaming and cursing at you. She's just very passionate about her stance. She's threatening a little bit. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, but she's not coming at you with a pitchfork. She's not coming at you in full on drag, screaming and ranting and raving as to why your God is not worthy of prayer. And the other piece is it ties directly into what we've been talking about the last however many episodes in First John. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, boastful pride of life. Of course you don't like it, because you are addicted to your sin. You are addicted to your flesh. You are addicted to your pride. You are addicted to the things that you want. You are addicted to the depravity of man. And that's the piece that separates someone like her from someone like you or someone like me, is we recognize our own depravity and we say, that's why I needed Christ to die on that cross, is because I know I'm depraved. I know that no one comes to the Father but through him. She is so far away from that. Maybe, hopefully, they institute prayer anyways, and they've got enough votes to do so. Maybe that'll start working on her soul a little bit.
Oh, I mean, it makes her feel uncomfortable, Garrett. Yeah, it should. That's the point.
Your sin is uncomfortable when you're confronted with it. Same for me. And I'm regenerative. I'm a regenerative believer. So the sanctification process goes on for your whole life. So when you're confronted with your own sin, yes, it makes you uncomfortable. So when she's confronted just with God, just with prayer in the beginning of the meeting, she's uncomfortable, of course.
We already say it in the pledge. Isn't that enough?
It's already written on our currency.
We're going to take this all the way to the court. Good.
Yeah.
We should. It's written in the Constitution. Really? Is it in the invisible ink on the back?
Yeah.
I'm going to need you to elaborate on that. Member of the school board. Do you even have kids? If that you haven't aborted? If you do, they probably are one of the other 7 genders that was from that Tacoma, Washington Lutheran College prom, right? And look, there's either the rainbow kamikaze religion. There's the I hate actively your religion, and I will say so publicly and adamantly. Or there's the climate one, which I want to get to because this one is wild. It's reported from the BBC. So there's a thing called wind theft.
Oh boy.
We have to continue to just grip it and rip it and say, we're going to pump that oil out of the ground. I don't care if I have to drill through the caribou's head in Alaska, or give me that black gold. All right. Wind theft, the mysterious effect plaguing wind farms. It's like they haven't considered the tragedy of the commons. How could this possibly happen? We just need to continue to push hard in this direction, even though we know that it is inevitably going to fail, because we actually have a proof of concept. So the BBC reports on this concept. As offshore wind farms are expanding around the world in the race to meet net zero climate targets, a worrying phenomenon is attracting. Some of the wind farms can steal the other's wind. Simply put, as the spinning turbines of a wind farm take energy from the wind, they create a wake and slow the wind beyond the wind farm. And therefore, when the wind gets a little further along and it gets to the next farm, it's not as powerful. They're not able to capture as much. It can be like a 10% energy loss to the next farm.
They're breaking wind, so to speak, Steve.
Yeah, and this goes for like 60 miles down the road. Okay. The UK government has pledged that by 2030, they're going to generate enough power from renewable sources. Good luck with wintertime. Currently, there are a number of disputes between these wind farms that are going to court against each other, saying like, you're stealing my wind. No, you're stealing mine. And then there's always the boondoggle element of it. So there's an investment perspective that even relatively small wake effects can cause problems. So to justify their investment, it's very important for the developer to be able to project that their wind farms are going to be able to capture a certain amount of energy for like a couple of decades. Otherwise, it's not worth establishing the wind farm. So they're trying to get like upwind of each other. So now there's going to be bids for more choice areas.
Oh, yes. Right. Give the government more money.
Well, I mean, they're going to give those choice areas to their friends, right? The lobbyists. That's exactly what's going to happen. So if operators or countries try to avoid these wake effects by securing the best spots for themselves, it can create another risk. Wake effects may cause what's known as the race to the water phenomenon, whereby states rush development in order to keep benefits from the best yet available wind resources. And they rush through development, and as a result, they ignore other risks like risk to the marine environment. So you're going to have more whales die because you're trying to get out. So on themselves.
That's a good callback to the stories. I think it was last year of all these whales dying, like in Maine and whatnot.
Just pedal to the metal, man. Give me that liquid gold. All right. And look, we avoided catastrophe in the form of Kamalamanism. Look, you and I are not waving pom poms for one thing or another. We do like some pace on some things here in the Trump administration, others not so much. But we're certainly better off than we were from the Madam Vice President, and also from the guy who preceded her, the one who was trying to help her break through that glass ceiling when he wasn't eating pudding or taking naps during the day. And I do think it's important to just bring up this one. Exclusive from Axios, Biden aides discussed a wheelchair use if he were reelected.
What?
A new book on Joe Biden's declining health during the second half of his presidency has revealed the extent to which the White House aides concealed his deterioration. No, you didn't. We all saw it. Aides grew so concerned by his halting walk and the risk of him falling over that they believed he might have required a wheelchair in the second term. They went to great lengths to stop Biden from falling after he tripped over a sandbag. The president was given trainers to wear more often, like the sneakers, which a surprising and disappointing number of members of Congress actually wear. Garrett and I have seen that and noted that when we took our visit to the Ivory City. There's a lot of geriatrics wearing sneakers. The president was provided with handrails when using stages with steps. Aides also attempted to work out shorter walking paths. They stood close to him, and they gave him briefings before events to ensure that he knew where to exactly walk, which I'm sure he promptly forgot right away. And just aside from his mobility issues, according to this new book, he would forget the names of people like Jake Sullivan, who was the national security advisor.
Hey, John, Joe. Oh, Jake.
Like,
Yes.
what is this guy doing here? I don't know. Anyway,
I like that you brought this up because it's like the mind meld is really, really sinking. I got a message. I think he's in our chat right now. Whatever 007 there on Rumble messaged me about this book this morning. He said this Tapper book is just the latest version. They didn't, and he mentioned those who call evil good and good evil. That's what he's talking about. This Tapper book is just the latest version. They didn't just lie about Biden's health. They lied about it while slandering anyone who told the truth as unhinged conspiracy theorists. That is so far beyond lying. It's an evil inversion of the truth. 100%. 100% that's the case. Jake Tapper, I don't have the clip handy, and maybe he's not one of them, but how many leftist pundits were there? He's sharp as a tack. Oh, he's as jolly and good as he's ever been. We were seeing it all the time. When anybody who had eyes to see saw that he was an aging old man who should probably be in an assisted living home. But no, he's just getting carted out and pumped full of God knows what by way of medicine to keep him going. And then they wanted to run the guy again.
Jake Tapper went on national TV. I mean, it was before the election, so maybe it was in the top 1,000 telecasts, and said things like, "Oh no, he's sharp as a tack. He's juggling knives and riding a unicycle. It's just his stutter, by the way."
Right.
Pedal to the metal. We're going to reject gradualism, particularly amongst another group of turbo freaks. Now, we talked about the queer prom. Let's talk about Camp Crinkle. Are you familiar with this one?
I'm not, but I'm excited for it.
Crinkle. At least it's not the kids. It's a 21 plus event for consenting adults who like to role play as younger characters. The acronym is ABDL, Alpha Bravo Delta Lima. It stands for Adult Baby Diaper Lover. What? This often means wearing adult diapers, onesies, footed sleepers, and other adult toddler outfits and costumes. Now, I was able to, this is you can sign up for it here. It's at like Zesty Ranch. If anybody in the American Radicals podcast is interested, you can just check it. I'm not going to put that in the description for the show because I don't want to encourage that. And I actually want to actively discourage it because I found a picture of where this is going to go. This is like what was that? The fire project that was going to be down like in the islands that completely collapsed on
Oh,
itself.
yep.
Yeah. It's tantamount to that, I think. Here's a picture of where Camp Crinkle is.
What? Whoa.
That's a
Good luck.
yellow
Double.
mobile home. And you know it's true because it has the Zesty sign.
This is even more disheartening than it already was. This looks like this actually is basically the beginning part of a script for a horror movie.
The double wide with a bunch of adults in onesies, that it kind of writes itself there. One more that we get to, and again, we're rejecting gradualism. We are getting aggressive with things. And I think we need to actually have tough conversations with people, things that are going to make them uncomfortable, and not just about how they need to pray. I mean, that's probably a conversation you should have with lots of people. But I want to talk about another problem that we have, and that is the dudes who feel pretty, who withhold that information, and the fact that they have failed to recognize that that is actually dangerous for them to do. And we'll play this a play, and then maybe get your thoughts on this one. This is a tranny who says they, whoever, doesn't tell their partner that he's a dude.
This might be controversial, but I don't usually tell people I'm trans and like if I'm dating them until later on when we're about to get intimate, because I just don't think they need to know. And I want them to get to know me first. So.
Oh, you're playing with fire. I would say sweetheart, but I guess I would say you're playing with fire, man, because you're a dude. Because that if you're a heterosexual male and you're about to get intimate with someone you thought was a female, and then they find out, so basically she's deceiving them. She's already deceived. Thank you. He is deceiving them. Language matters, Steve, because he has already deceived himself into being something he is not, because he is a he, not a she. And so I feel like I don't need to tell them. So you're going to start the relationship off with a lie, multiple lies at this point, until you're about to get intimate. Good luck with that. Because at least I know we're not in an era where men are steel and ships are wood anymore, as some old cop friends of mine used to like to say about some of the old timers. But still, there's enough testosterone out there. This is going to end poorly for you, or very potentially could.
It contributes to the crazy talking points that we were hearing from the Biden administration before, and not just from the federal level. You hear the crazies. I'm sure that woman who's in charge of the school board would be very sympathetic to that perspective about trans violence. It's a hate crime. Look, I'm just going to be straight with you. If you deceive a guy and you kept saying she, I kind of stumbled and said she. It looks like a woman.
It looks like a
woman.
woman.
To be honest, that dude looks like a woman.
His voice isn't. I thought it was going to be more manly, and I could see how he passes as a woman. All that makeup and whatnot. You're playing with fire there, though.
You're gonna get killed. You're gonna get killed. You're gonna deceive the wrong guy, and he will be embarrassed and humiliated. And then he's gonna be fearful that there's gonna be blackmail material, and he will come to a conclusion that is probably the worst decision of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And he will end your life, or he will beat you to a point where you're gonna not be able to recover fully from that, and he will feel okay with that. It'll just be this impulse, this rage in doing it. Like, how did you do this to me?
Mm-hmm.
You've set me up, and completely like has a meltdown. And instead of just being like rational, being like, hey, look, dude, look like a lady, as opposed to like, well, I can't possibly be a gay, right? I mean, you could see that totally happening.
Dude looks like a lady. Don't YouTube, please. I mean, it was like 5 seconds and wasn't even the real thing. So don't shadow ban us for that one.
All right. Garrett, after that, dude looks like a lady. Can you steer us in the right direction here? Give us your final thoughts for the day.
Yes, sir. Like I mentioned earlier, we're back. We're back in 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever.
Look with me, if you will, at Romans chapter 1. Beginning of verse 18, familiar passage, but I want us to look at it. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and the unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore, God gave them up to the lust of their hearts to impurity. Here we are. These lusts, these desires, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. Dishonorable passions. The desires themselves are dishonorable. Enough already with this gay Christian stuff. And I don't just say enough already. I don't mean this in the sense of, they're over there and I'm over here. I mean this in the pastoral sense. How cruel is that? If a man comes to me talking about a desire for a woman who is not his wife, I'm not going to tell him to just go ahead and embrace the desire because the desire in and of itself is okay. It's not. God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged the natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameful acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty of their error. There is the bad fruit. It's pointed in the wrong direction. It is arising from the wrong source. And it is producing bad fruit.
I let Bodie go a little bit longer there because it really ties in immensely with a lot of what we talked about here today. I mentioned it a few times during the show because for those who don't know, I picked the clip before, and Steve doesn't brief me up on most of the stories until we're about to go, or oftentimes not at all, just to get a cold reaction from me. But think of some of the things we talked about here today. The Lutheran college doing the LGBTQ prom, the dude who looks like a lady at the end, even the school board woman who has been turned over to a reprobate mind, as it says in Romans 1 as well. And then to bring it all together here at the end. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, boastful pride of life. We are depraved still, by and large, as a nation. We have to recognize that depravity. We have to give it up to God. We have to turn our lives to Christ. It's the only way. It's the only way, honestly. If you're just here thinking or wanting to hear stories and learn about ways that or important topics that we need to know about because you want to save our nation, the only way to save our nation is to turn to Christ one by one. That is ultimately the only way.
And I mean, things just providentially seem to work out. Today's palate cleanse, look, it's going to take rejection of gradualism. It's going to take an embracing of grip it and rip it, some common sense solutions, and then doing things that are going to make you maybe feel uncomfortable and the person you're doing it to feel uncomfortable because they are engaging in the wrong behavior. And Adam Carolla does that so nicely here.
I was at a stoplight in Santa Monica, California, and I looked over and there was a homeless guy sitting there, older guy, and he's just sitting there and he had a sign that said homeless and deaf. And I thought, I've never seen that before. And I kind of looked at him and I started to think, like, okay, normally it's like, I'm not going to give you money so you can go buy drugs. But this guy's deaf, you know, and maybe he has a real situation and maybe I should be, you know, a little more magnanimous. So I kind of looked at the guy and he looked at me and I went, yeah, okay. And he came over and I rolled the window down and I started fishing around my ashtray, get a few bucks out for the guy. And I thought, let me just check something real quick. And I just leaned on the horn and this guy jumped back 5 feet and I was like, you ain't deaf and I ain't dumb.
That it's just common sense. I'm sure it was very uncomfortable, but it was very funny and I appreciate it as always. All right, guys. Done for the day here on the American Radicals podcast. If you haven't already, give us a thumbs up here on Rumble. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, all of those. And we'll be back with you Saturday, 10:30 Eastern time. Until then, have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/AmRadPod.